Hello and welcome to the 100th episode of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert as always, Damien Fay and me, Andy Leeks. Damien, the music is there, we're celebrating good times. How good does it feel?
It feels amazing, Andy. We made it 100. There's not many podcasts out there that ever get past 10, 12 episodes, but we've done 100. We said we would. I remember the 50th episode. I even remember the first episode, but we've done well.
I can't believe it. We're here. We're enjoying it. We're having fun. You've got a hat on. It's a beautiful hat, by the way.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, yours is not too bad yourself.
What do you think about the nibbles I've laid on here? The stuffed olives, too much?
No, a bit too much. The dry roasted peanuts are probably my favourite, to be honest.
What's quite interesting, and we're going to look at a few clips. We'll explain what's coming up a little bit later. We're going to go over some old clips and some old favourites. But one thing that I do remember from way back when is we used to travel, didn't we? I used to travel 40 or 50 miles.
Andy, you said we. It seemed to be me that was mainly travelling.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right. I think I did 3 trips in all the time that we were doing.
In the early podcasts, Andy and I seemed to forget the wonders of the internet, just suspend the reality of the situation. And I used to tend to drive an 80-mile round trip to record these podcasts so me and Andy could sit in the same room. And we seem to have actually, how long did it take us to stop doing that?
About 30 or 40, about 30 episodes in, we decided that we'd actually listen to...
so we're talking about 10 months there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 months of driving. And after wearing the tyres almost thin on my car, we decided to use the wonders of Skype. We caught up with the rest of the world and our life was never the same. But, having said that, we find ourselves, Andy, on the 100th episode repeating the very same mistakes that we made in the first episode, with me having to, seemingly drive to an 80-mile round trip.
Yeah, and ironically, it took me more takes to do the 100th intro than it did on the first one that we ever did. So I've still not learned. But it's nice to have you in the same room. Part of doing this was that we could do this together. We could go over old clips. We could catch up on old times. We were joking earlier there about about putting on the spread and the hats and everything else. But it is nice to catch up. We've put a brew on and we're going over old times.
I've had a cup of tea, yeah. And so people know what's coming up in this 100th episode. It's going to be different, isn't it? First of all, you're going to learn absolutely nothing.
Zero. Nothing
this episode. We are really doing things differently because we started off thinking we're going to do a live episode. And in hindsight, that probably that would have been a far easier thing to do than a highlight show
and far more boring.
It probably would have been far more boring, but it's far harder doing a highlight show. We started off thinking, what do we do? Do we pull together the best clips about money that we've made over the 99 previous episodes? But not wanting to sound arrogant, Andy, the show is that good. The quality of the stuff we give out to you guys, we couldn't condense it down or do it justice by trying to get into a show. And then what also makes our podcast different is the fact we also quite like to entertain and enjoy ourselves. So what we've done...
I thought you were going to say what makes us different is that we stuff up a lot, which we're also going to hear.
We're going to hear a lot of that. So what we've done is we've gone back through the previous 99 gems of episodes that we've made and found some of our highlights in Andy and I enjoying ourselves, outtakes, some good stories that have come up. And so this is all about you just, being demob happy, like when you're at the end of school holiday, when you go to school and you get to term time, even the teachers don't care anymore. That's this episode. Don't worry about your money this week.
That's it. Loosen your tie, take off your blazer, put that pen down, and you can watch Pete's Dragon, or whatever it was back in the 80s that we used to watch. That's a bit of an old reference.
Yeah, you lost me for a second there. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through a bunch of clips. We're going to talk over some of them and introduce them, and then you're going to sit back and enjoy them, because we do realise that everybody hasn't necessarily been on the complete journey from podcast 1 to 99. But should we go ahead and introduce the first clip?
I think it's for you to introduce, absolutely. Let's go on with the first one.
Right, the first clip actually goes back to our very first episode. It's actually the first 2 minutes.
It's the first 2 minutes that we ever recorded together.
That shows you the quality of what we do, because to enter our highlights reel at the first 2 minutes, it just... You'll hear from the clip. We set up what the podcast was intending to be before it descends into Andy and I laughing, which set out the stall, I think, for the next 99 episodes. So have a listen.
Brilliant. Here it goes. Well, here we are. Hello and welcome to Money to the Masses podcast, the first, and I'm certainly not going to be the last. Welcome to Damien, author extraordinaire, whatever you want to say, really. Damien, introduce yourself.
Well, extraordinaire is quite quite generous, Andy, actually. But well, I created Money to the Masses 4 years ago, and now this is the launch of the first and hopefully first of many podcasts, which are trying to bring you some insightful bits and pieces about money.
Yeah, so how do you see it playing out? Is this going to be just an informal chat, you and I, or are we going to put it into certain sections? What are we going to do?
I think a good idea, it's pretty loose, we'll chat about money, but try and keep a couple of sections about how to make money, how to save it, how to spend it, and reader questions.
I think that's absolutely perfect. I think it's good to keep it's good to let the listenership know what they're going to get in each episode. Hopefully there'll be a bit of insight into money. There'll be something interesting for everyone in each one, and who knows, there may even be a little bit of banter along the way. So the first section then, making money. What are we going to cover in this week's episode?
Well, I thought I'd start off with a new website I came across the other day. I'm often asked how to make money. A bit of spare pocket money on the side, and I wanted to run one past you called Quidcar, and it's a new idea that they've got. You can lease a car for £40 a month.
Not a quid then.
No, not a quid.
Why do they call it Quidcar?
Well,
should be called 40 Quidcar. Sorry.
I don't think the idea of 40quidcar.com would work, but there is a catch to this.
So there it is, laughing within the first 2 minutes of our podcast. Interestingly, how long did we keep that going for? The whole make it, spend it, do it. No, it wasn't do
make it. No, Andy, it was. We had this problem all the way through. It was make it, save it. No, it was make it. No, make it, save it, spend it.
I think this is why we dumped it.
Yeah, I think it probably was why we dumped it. I think we lasted about the same time as my driving, so about 30 episodes. Probably wasn't that long before we then decided to just do whatever it was I felt like on each episode.
It was a good idea in hindsight because it gave 4 different sort of rounded sections, but actually in reality...
Three different sections.
I thought it was 4.
Oh no, there was reader questions, yeah, there was.
Yeah, there was questions.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a good idea, I think.
But to do that every week, each week, it didn't make the show as organic as it should be. Sometimes there weren't. We were trying to force things in just to sort of fill a gap.
Yeah, and I think the feedback we got after a while, as the show evolved, we lost the banter at one point. Do you remember that? And then we brought it back. Because if you're listening to this, if this is the first time you've ever listened to our podcast, trust me, you do learn stuff. We do talk about money a lot, but not today. And we veered off doing a bit of the banter, and then we suddenly got a deluge of people saying, no, bring it back. Start talking again about your escapades. And on that...
We were like one of those bands where they go off and sort of discover themselves and start playing this really weird stuff. And they're like, no, just go back and play the good stuff again.
Exactly that. But before we do that, Andy, while we're on to the intros, listen to this intro. This just shows you they never got any better than the first one we played, the first one we did. This is episode number 63.
Here are your hosts, Damien Fay and Andy Leaks.
Hello and welcome to episode number 63 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fay, and me, Andy Leaks. Damien, welcome back. How are we doing?
I'm wet, Andy.
Okay, well, I didn't think it was that kind of a podcast, but do tell me more.
Well, funnily enough, what was I thinking there? I think it was only completely taken out of context. I think I wasn't thinking. It's the out of context
that makes it funny.
That made that. But when listening to this, Andy, I am not the only one when taken completely out of context. Sounds ridiculous. I mean,
I think I know the clip.
Have a listen to this clip. What were you doing when I happened to mention teenage boys? What is the sound you're making? I'm going to mention it. Last week I said Coupon Kid, he mentioned some of the great cashback apps, and we featured the bit that he'd done. And I said, the Coupon Kid, we need to have more of him. I love it. Love him. He's brilliant. We need to see more of him on telly. And I'm obviously some sort of good luck charm, not only winning toothbrushes, but for people's careers. Because as soon as I said those words, then last week you couldn't get the guy off the telly or off the newspaper or off the radio, because he went viral in a big way. Because the guy went and did a fantastic piece where he's only a teenager, but he went from, if you haven't seen it, in case you missed that, here's that last bit again, where he's only a teenager, but and again a teenager, but and one final time, teenager, but
All right, enough now. Don't play it again. Right. I feel like I need to respond. Okay, it was out of context. I was purely... The reason I said in that way is because I remembered, I recognised, I knew the guy. I'd seen him on the telly. It was in recognition, not in recognition of his handsome good looks.
That hole you're digging yourself into is enormous, Andy. Let's move quickly on. Let's pick another highlight.
Okay, yeah. There's 2 highlights here that I've queued up, and these are from our very first episode, actually.
Again?
Yeah, and they're good ones.
It was a good one. It was obviously downhill from episode 1.
Here we go. I've actually heard of a similar kind of scheme for bicycles, where you can hire them out. I'm not sure if you have to pay for them. They've got LEDs on the spokes. This is genuinely true. LEDs on the spokes, and they're programmed when the wheels get moving. You know, like these moving text, the LED text, and the wheels are actually advertised. It's not a joke. You're looking at me as if I'm joking. It's a true thing. It's
Have you just made that up?
No. It's maybe,
Did you dream this?
Maybe you don't hire the bikes, but the software that you plug onto your bike, literally, it's like LEDs on the spokes, and as you move around, it's like a.
So it's like a mobile rave.
It's a text that will display like a message to say, go to this nightclub, and basically if you live in that particular area, they will pay you to I'm sure.
I love the concept, Andy. If it doesn't exist, then I think you and I should start.
Well, maybe the listeners can.
Yeah.
Maybe if they learn nothing else today,
can listeners please write in if you have seen an LED bike going past your house, just to save Andy's blushes, because I'm not sure that this exists.
If you haven't seen it, and if it isn't out there, go and do it. Get a patent on it. Contact us. Tell us how much money you made, and just say thank you, because that's one of my gems. If I didn't really listen to it,
over time, I think the listeners will work out that Andy has had more new business ideas than anybody else I know, and we'll probably cover some of those, because they are amazing.
My wife does call me Del Boy. This time, my phrase used to be, "This time next year I'll be a millionaire."
And so you're just doing a podcast with me.
Yeah, for nothing.
For nothing.
In fact, it's probably costing me.
Well, yeah, technically it is, I think, actually, Andy, at the moment. But anyway, moving on.
Anything else in Make It?
Well, another idea, actually coming down to see you, that one, campinmygarden.com. I think that's another idea that I'd seen previously that got a bit of... was quite popular when I wrote about it. The idea is you rent your garden out to a person who would like to camp for a night for
a fee,
a small fee.
Okay.
And the way it works, you simply put on the site what the facilities or lack of facilities you're offering, the price, and then somebody will come and camp in your garden.
So I assume that people can potentially charge more for maybe a more desirable area, better views, more facilities. Like if they've got an outhouse with a toilet facilities or whatever that they could use, they could potentially charge more.
Exactly. We'll find out. I'll put your garden on there.
Good lad.
I mean, what sort of gifts were they receiving from the people who went?
There's gold watches.
Isn't the etiquette that you're supposed to spend something equivalent to what it costs per head? Because I'm going to my sister-in-law's wedding in a couple of weeks.
Well, I just quoted £300 or £400 for a normal person per head, and I've never given that to anyone.
I mean, I like them, but I don't like them that much.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anyone on this earth that I like that much.
If anybody out there knows the etiquette of what you spend, I think it's something like...
Oh, don't say, because I've got a figure in my head. Right? Should we say it at the same time? I mean, honestly, have you got a figure in your head?
What I would spend?
For a couple.
For a couple.
So if it was a cash equivalent, sometimes you have to go on these websites. Like
if it was a cash equivalent of somebody who's a friend.
How good a friend? Are we talking have to dress up in a special suit like part of the entourage.
Okay. How much I'd give you if you got married? Well, you are married.
Yeah, I am.
How much
married.
did I give you?
Oh, well, that's a question. I have to. Did I even send you a thank you card? I don't know. Okay, I've got a figure in my head. How much did I get? I went to your wedding.
Yeah, I know, Andy. Yeah. Anyway, what's the figure?
Right, ready, steady, go.
50 quid.
Oh, there we go. I'm delighted with that.
I probably just gave you back your 50 quid.
It's probably the same note.
Yeah.
That's quite good because it goes to show that at least we're thinking on the same level. Oh, if only we'd have scripted that. £50. No, there we go. Well, there you have it, people.
Yeah, don't invite Andy or me to a wedding if you want more than 50 quid.
No, 50 quid, that's it. Oh, there we go. The £50. That's what we value our friendship at. 50 English pounds. Right, on to the next one. Now, I'm going to slightly embarrass you here because I think this is possibly one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to you.
I know it is. I know. I'm reminded about this by my family regularly, and I do cringe about the fact that I did this, but...
I'll play the clip and we'll talk about it after. I'm good. Anything happened in the last week that we need to know?
Well, honestly?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. My daughter, who I often talk about, had a sports day.
Okay.
Yeah, the only reason I mention it is because she did brilliantly, and I was bullied into doing the dad's race.
Oh, there we go. Pushed into doing the daddy stuff.
Yeah.
Was it really super competitive, far more competitive than the kids?
Well, it was far more competitive, yes, and I mean, I was bullied because I couldn't let her down, so I had to go on the starting block and run. So, like, what would you do?
Was it a straightforward sort of race, or is it egg and spoon, or
no.
sack race, or
no, straight race, Andy?
Right.
So you can imagine sort of 40 men standing there on the starting block.
Got your spikes on.
Got your spikes
the
on.
Starting blocks.
Starting blocks.
Checking the wind.
Checking grass in the air, checking the wind, looking at the 20 metres to the other end, and psyching out.
Did you have a word with them to see who they were using for their stopwatches and their timings?
Yeah, and I sort of got a good lane and everything like that. But
come on then, tell us, how did you get on?
I tore my hamstring.
No, seriously?
I'm ashamed. Yeah, the starter we started, and I tore my hamstring.
Did the physio come on? Or?
No, I managed to style it out. Sort of. If anybody could potentially style out a hamstring injury, then I did it. So
just a sort of a limp and a sort of.
Well, yeah, I kind of sort of pulled up in a that's me done kind of way. Yeah. I would have won, but yeah.
Of course you would, yeah.
But now I'm sporting a massive bruise on the back of my thigh. Well, actually, it's travelled down to the back of my knee now. So by the time we do the next podcast, it'll probably be by my ankle. But the funny thing was, my wife didn't realise, and we got back in the car, and I tend to drive, and I got in the car and I said, no, you drive, you can drive home. She was like, are you okay? And I was sort of still trying to style it out, but in absolute agony, because as I ran, I did feel it pop, and it wasn't even just that I kind of tweaked it. I've done it once before.
This is a proper full-on.
Yeah, so it wasn't my leg that concerned me. It was my ego. It was the fact that I'd shamed myself that I'd managed to pull a hamstring in a dad's race, that I'll never live it down. I mean, I could have not mentioned it today, but given that everybody else I know is now mocking me for doing this, yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's young now for children to start doing sports days and things like that. I thought they were trying to make these things sort of obsolete, where it's too competitive.
Well, I was hoping the dad's race was a thing of the past.
Yeah.
I thought that health and safety sort of
perhaps now they will
consigned. Well, the previous year, we shouldn't laugh about these things, but the previous year there was a chap who almost had a heart attack when he did the dad's race, and the warning from the woman who was starting it. Yeah, we don't want a repeat of last year. And the other dads were looking at each other thinking, what happened last year? I knew what happened last year. So it was almost heart attack material. He didn't have a heart attack before. We're not just laughing at a poor chap.
No.
Yeah, so I tore my hamstring, Andy.
Well, I mean, that's great.
It's not great.
Well, it's great that you had something to do and something to talk about in this podcast. The listeners will be pleased. I've got absolutely nothing for you.
Your ending of, I've got absolutely nothing for you.
Do you know what? It reminds me of the times that the amount of times I say those few words to my wife, I've got absolutely nothing for you. And it's not just birthdays and anniversaries, it's just in general.
It's in the bedroom. I've got nothing for you, darling.
Steady.
But that clip, I've never done a dad's race since then. That was 2 years ago, and every year my daughter asks me to do the dad's race at school, and I feign injury. I have to pretend that I've got. Oh no, Dad can't do it, and of course the other dads go, "Why aren't you running?" And it's one of those stories that just won't go away. I can't until she's basically at university or something, or with her own children. I can't live it down. But yeah, I mean, I am embarrassed by it. But anyway, let's move on.
Just move on from it. Draw a line under
Let's
it.
pretend that didn't happen. The earlier clip, we mentioned your business ideas, Andy. I mean, just to point out, nobody did get in contact about the spokes and the LED.
It's a real thing. It happened. And do you know what makes me funny? Listening back to that clip as well is I just carried on regardless. You were absolutely adamant, and you were trying to make light of it, and I just wasn't having. It was my sort of passion for this thing that clearly doesn't
You were
exist.
steamrolling this, as if to say, but I was protesting
Just
about
listen
it.
to me.
What are you? The LED lights exist, but we've not had any proof they do. So
No.
at the moment, it is still a business idea of Andy. So there were some fantastic business ideas of Andy's had in the past, and this is the gem. This was one podcast we picked your top 3, and this was number 1. Have a listen. So what's number 1?
Number 1 was probably the time I realised I needed to. We didn't quite have enough for the wedding that I wanted.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh in advance, but this probably is my personal favourite because I knew Andy at this point. The other ideas that Andy said, I didn't. Although I knew him. No, I knew you when you probably did the disco, but we'd parted companies. We'd sort of separated for a period.
Trial separation.
A trial separation. But this was when Andy and I were working together. He did this one.
Yeah, I'm saying it through gritted teeth because looking back at it now, it's just not really the done thing to do, especially as I didn't tell my wife. Essentially, family were very generous. We had a wedding coming up and they gave us a set amount of money. We saved up a set amount of money and we were just a little bit short by a few £100 or £1,000. And I thought, how can we scrape this money together rather than doing what any normal person would do and take out maybe a short-term loan and try and lean on other friends or family, or just work their butts off at work with overtime.
Maybe your entrepreneurial spirit kicked in, Andy.
And I thought, do you
it's
know
like
what?
a spidey sense that you can't control.
I read an article somewhere about people like selling their virginity and things like that on
I
eBay.
know what you're going to say then.
Yeah, selling their virginity on eBay, and I thought, well, how ridiculous. But my entrepreneurial side said, ridiculous it may be, but it made that person 15 grand. So I eBayed 2 tickets to my wedding. But it wasn't just 2 tickets to my wedding. It was overnight stay. It was obviously the full reception dinner. They got to sit at the top table. This is a true story.
I know, Andy. I know. But you make it sound like it was like the wedding of the year. I can understand.
Who would want to come to my wedding?
When Kate and William got married,
Yeah.
and you got to go, if they bid that for charity or something like that, I can imagine somebody might bid.
Who would want to go to a bald guy from Kent's wedding?
So did anyone bid? You did it on eBay?
Yeah, my plan was to basically to run regular eBay auctions, like buy it now auctions for like £5 at a time. So essentially, in my mind, it was going to be like a raffle. And by doing the buy it now, what you're doing is you're donating that money and you're going into the hat. And then I'll do a big draw, and then there'll be 2 tickets available for the winner to come to my wedding, all expenses paid. And in my mind, I was thinking I could raise maybe £1,000 from these raffle tickets, and it would only cost me a couple of £100 to put these guys up and bring them to the wedding. Wasn't quite prepared for the negative press I got, both in the local press, via various online forums. There was a forum called grumpyoldmen.co.uk who dedicated, I'd say, around about 400 pages on what a fat bastard I was.
So I shouldn't laugh, Andy. I really shouldn't. But
yeah, because on the eBay auction item, I posted a picture of me and my wife when we got engaged.
that was probably your first mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah, and essentially there was just a whole raft of comments saying what an ugly bastard I was. and that I had no morals, and is there nothing in this world that isn't sacred? I could go on.
They didn't admire your entrepreneurial spirit, Andy.
No, they just thought I was an absolute charlatan.
What did the local paper say?
Oh, it was something like local man decides to sell.
What was the local paper? Is it like the Watford Gazette or something like that?
You won't be able to find it now. It was an online blog.
Somebody will have a copy.
But anyway, looking back, not the best. What actually happened in the end is I got so much negative sort of press and comments and all these online forums, because it was just as online forums were kicking in as well. And I just get, because I had my contact details, because it was on eBay, I had PayPal and contact details. Every so often I'd just get emailed, no hello or anything, just emailed a link. Check this one out, and I'd click on it, and it would just be pictures of me, and people had drawn glasses on me, a speech bubble coming out and saying I've lost all my dignity. So it was a sad time. But
it was a day when the internet bit back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that you probably invented trolling, didn't you? So you probably have given something else to the world.
Well, I kind of helped push the concept of trolling to that next level. When people were twiddling their thumbs, waiting for Twitter to arrive, they just decided to, get back.
So did you make any money though, Andy?
No, it was quite embarrassing. I had to contact everyone who had bid, and there were a few nice people that said, "Oh, it's such a nice idea. Wish you luck." And they bid it, and they said, "I don't care if I win. I'm just hoping that I can donate to your wedding," which did leave a really sour taste. Basically, I was just taking money off strangers, but I then had to send this horrible email out and return the PayPal payment, basically grovelling and saying, "Look, I've probably made a bit of a mistake. Thank you for your support, but I can't take your money." And I did refund everyone. There were 2 people, I think, that insisted that I had to.
Yeah,
keep
I think that is probably. I remember this event unfolding.
Debacle. I like to call it a debacle.
I remember this
a midlife crisis before I reached midlife.
I remember this unfolding. If you can picture the scene. Every morning I wandered into work
with my
locked morning Andy. His head was in his hands as I strolled to my desk and then logged on to the latest thread about Andy's wedding. But in fairness, Andy, I have to say, I think that was a bit harsh. I don't think you deserved quite the criticism you got. It probably was,
I did.
In hindsight. Yeah, but you didn't need to be quite so mean. But
I think my favourite phrase back then was, have a look at this one.
But the reason we...
Oh, I've got a funny colour of red and purple as I listen back to that. It's so embarrassing. Funnily enough, we had our 10th wedding anniversary just a couple of weeks ago, and I actually visited the venue, and it just brings it all back. It really does. It's excruciating. Still.
Are you talking about the clip, not your wedding, did you?
Oh, my wife's going to listen to this one too. She doesn't listen to them normally, but I said, you must tune into the 100th. Oh, no, Damien. Oh, look, actually, that just goes to show that just happened off the cuff. Things like that happen all the time. There are outtakes that continue to go on our podcast, but I just wish we'd kept them all. Here's one that we did keep, and we actually put in on the end of one of our podcasts. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Here we go. Right, so I suppose we better get... Right, good stuff. I suppose we... Right, good stuff. I suppose we'd better get... Oh, that sounds rubbish now. I can't do that. Right. Right, good stuff. I suppose we'd better get on with the money... Why can't I say this? Right, good stuff. I suppose we'd better get on with the money stuff. The first time I did it right, you didn't even say anything back.
Sorry, Andy,
Were you just surprised I managed to get it out?
I'm surprised, yeah.
Here we go, right.
I won't know.
This is gonna... I'm going to have to put this at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
This is going to be an outtake. Right, I suppose that's it. We should get on with the money stuff then.
Yeah. I can't, Andy, sorry. I lost my train of thought. Right, now do it again. I know what I'm going to talk about now.
Fucking hell.
Do you know what? I'm crying with laughter. People don't realise when I really laugh, I just floods of tears come down my face. At the moment, I'm sitting here like laughing, aren't I, Andy? I mean, it's sad that I'm laughing at myself. I'm on half of these clips. It's like the worst case of someone laughing at his own jokes. But right, that clip there, the previous clip, makes us sound like complete incompetent fools, doesn't it, Andy?
Amateurs. Amateurs.
Amateurs. But we're not. We are professionals, aren't we?
Oh, I'd like to think so.
And we can persevere in the face of adversity. The next two clips are, well, there seems to be a police raid going on, and a baby and a small child.
Yeah, so it's not always our fault, is it?
It's not our fault. One of the things I want to go on to explain to people, though, there was a story a couple of years ago that's really stuck with me, of a journalist that had their email hacked. Now, as we become more online and
sounds like the police are onto them already in the background there.
Can you hear that? I think that's quite nice. Obviously, the local police in South East London are realising that we're doing a security-based theme and giving us some accompanying music.
Creating a lovely backing track.
It would appear that they're actually getting closer. So,
Damien, if you get arrested, do I have to carry on the rest of this pod on my own?
Yeah, if I get arrested, you just carry on the podcast. I mean, where I live isn't that bad, trust me. He says as the SWAT team comes through the window. I was said that I wasn't entering into the true spirit by the guy who actually ran the whole thing. I mean, most people thought it was hilarious that I'd made my entry slip in about 2 minutes by just writing. And that was the time it took to write 1-0. Did you hear that belch? I don't know if the mic just picked that up.
It did.
But we just had some wind there, and
I'll be honest. I'm used to editing out your belches and wins. I'm going to keep that one in.
Yeah. She now has pulled off one of my head earpieces, and she's currently chewing it. People are probably thinking she is the quietest baby ever, but trust me, I could probably do this every week, actually, to be fair. Right, let's just take a quick break from the clips, because there's a few things, actually, to reward the people who have listened this far in the podcast and who've listened to the previous 100. We're doing a competition.
Yeah, good, okay.
We're doing a competition where we're giving away £100 worth of Amazon vouchers to one lucky person, plus an annual subscription to my 80/20 investment service, which costs £204. That's £300 worth of goodies that we're going to give away.
£300 of giveaways, nearly as much as I spent on this spread.
You need spent on these sausage rolls. And yeah. The £300, how you win it, Andy, that's what you're going to ask me next. Ready?
Yeah. How can our listeners win that, Damien?
I'm glad you asked.
So professional.
The way we're gonna win this is they're gonna have to do a bit of work. Now, going back, we were talking earlier on. Going back to the early podcast, we tried different things and we dropped stuff and we changed the format. One of the things early on that I only just remembered the other day when I was doing this sort of editing, pulling clips together for this podcast, was that midway through, probably from I would say certainly the first 50 podcasts, possibly only as far as the first 20 or so, when we were getting reader questions, we would anonymise their names. Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people didn't make it clear whether or not they wanted their names to be read out, and we thought some of them were quite sort of personal questions. So rather than just say this is from Anonymous, which sounds like it's made up, we gave them an anonymous name. We effectively changed their name.
Yeah, and we could just go John Smith, the thing is, if you make up names, you always come up with John Smith equivalent, so it sounds like it's made up. So the only way to come up with something authentic, we decided to have a theme with the names, and there is a running theme which Andy created almost spontaneously on the spot. So the competition is, if you go back and you're going to do a bit of work, if you can find some of those reader questions and take some of those early names and tell us the common link between them all, then you will win that prize. And one in particular is quite an obscure name, so if you find that name, ultimately probably find out the answer if you Google it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good competition. There is a bit of work to be done because we're not going to tell you which episodes we mention the names. So you need to do a bit of digging around, but it's worth it. There's £100 Amazon vouchers and £240 worth of subscriptions to Damien's amazing 80/20 service, which really is worth more than the money that it is sort of effectively worth.
Definitely.
In pounds and pence.
Definitely. So go back, listen to those. You may be some curveballs in there, the odd reader question name that isn't part of the game that we were kind of playing before we forgot about it and it just sort of went to dust. So go and find it, enter the competition. You can enter by emailing us, podcast@moneytothemasses, tweeting. I'm going to leave this open. I've got a feeling that no one's going to win this for a while, but if you are one of those loyal listeners who's probably heard a lot of them, you can also gauge from some of the titles of the podcast that have mentions of reader questions. I'm sure some of those have it in there. And to just give you a bit of a hint, it was Andy that picked the name. So if you've listened to the things that Andy likes in life, you'll probably be a bit of a hint there. But I'm not going to give you any more clues.
And it's not Playboy centerfold models.
It's not.
Just
No,
so you know.
No, it's not. While we talk about our listeners, we did ask people to send in messages, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
And we got a number of messages. We can't read them all out because this podcast is actually a lot longer than we thought it was going to be. But we're going to read one of them from one of our loyal listeners who sent it via Facebook.
Indeed, yeah. This one's from Sheila West. Lovely to hear from you again. She says, really looking forward to hearing the 100th episode of Money to the Masses. I want to send a huge thank you to you both, that's us, Damien, for bringing great financial advice to the masses each week, and we love your banter. Keep it going, and thank you for all your hard work. From Sheila in a very, very hot and sunny Valencia in Spain.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked the banter because you've got a whole episode of nothing else but that. It wasn't just our listeners who sent us in messages. We actually had some from people in fellow podcasters, friends of the show. Pete Matthew, whose show I've been on a couple of occasions, and who is coming on our show in a few weeks. He's been booked in. So I know there's a number of you that listen to Pete's Meaningful Money podcast as well as our show. Well, here's a message from Pete.
Hi, this is Pete Matthew of the Meaningful Money podcast, here to say a massive well done and congratulations to Damien and Andy on achieving the milestone of 100 podcast episodes. They reckon that most podcasts don't get past episode 7 or 8 or something like that, so to get to 100 really is an outstanding and unusual achievement. So fair play, guys, well done to you. Every week you're bringing great value and doing so with grace and humour, which is fantastic to listen to. So it's a pleasure to share the airwaves with you. Please keep doing what you're doing. You're doing excellent work. Cheers.
Right, thanks Pete for that message. I have to correct him, there's absolutely no value in this podcast whatsoever. But Andy, it's been all of 10 minutes since we've had one of your harebrained business ideas, so here we go again. Maybe I could in a smiley face. Actually, I was thinking, I don't know what made me think about it the other day. There's another, and Andy is one of those, obviously an interesting guy and interesting facts about Andy. Andy once ran a certain famous person's fan club, didn't you, Andy?
Did I?
Yes, you did. You told me once upon a time you did, or you asked to do.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who's on EastEnders?
No, I can't put this in the pod, only because it's just too embarrassing. It's too excruciating. I can't even believe. Yeah, I contacted it. I didn't actually run it, but there was. I don't know what I was thinking.
Who was it?
It was Shane Ritchie.
Shane Ritchie. See, this goes back to.
This isn't going in the pod.
It is going in the pod. Let's force it into the pod. It's one of Andy's madcap business ideas that he's had. Go back to an early podcast. There are some absolute corkers from Andy.
The thing is, where that came from the heart and from the core, because that was a hard listen. That really was a hard listen. It come from the heart and the core, Damien.
I didn't get the heart and the core reference.
Oh, my mum used to run
passion.
fan clubs, and I thought it was in my sort of, it'd been passed down through the generations, so it was my duty to run a fan club.
It was your destiny to
Why
choose Shane Ritchie.
Why choose Shane Ritchie? I mean, oh my God.
You'd argue he's got longevity. He's still around, isn't he?
I think he is. But maybe. Well, fan club.
Yeah. Right to him. Right. People often write in, don't they? And I think people think that we leave the most amazing sort of madcap lives sometimes. That's amazing. I knock that out. That's not true. I think they think we have some slightly bizarre things go on in our lives, and we do.
We do. Bizarre, interesting. I think we're going to play a clip now where you introduce a podcast because I'm not there.
Hello, and welcome to episode 67 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, me, and no Andy Leaks this week. Slightly strange podcast, still going to be as great as ever, but my co-host Andy has come up with the best the dog ate my homework excuse I've ever come across. Apparently, Andy is in the middle of England inside a sealed chamber, all in the name of science, and this is some event that's been, well, an experiment where a national newspaper has locked him away. I can't actually give you any more because apparently it's top secret and it'll be out and published soon. But such is the weird and wonderful world of Andy Leaks that nobody else could probably come up with an excuse quite like that. So hurry up, Andy, come back. We'll see you next week. But on with the show. The show must go on. So why were you in a chamber in the middle of England?
Well, I can exclusively reveal on... it's not exclusive, it's been out there in print. I can reveal in this podcast that I was doing an experiment with a lady called Jenny Agg, who's the one of the main editors in the health section of the Daily Mail. So, yeah, it made the Daily Mail double-page spread, and, yeah, my ugly face was part of the experiment.
Do you know what? The Daily Mail are obsessed with our daily lives, it would appear, because the next clip is now infamous in our podcasting history, Walletgate. Now, listen to this, but the story is so ridiculous, but it culminates in me attaining fame in the main pages of the Daily Mail. Have a listen, Walletgate. And this story happened late this afternoon, so it's only, like I say, a few hours old where it began, that my wife came into the house and said, I found a wallet in the street, and I don't know, like, I didn't see who it was who's dropped it. Oh, what should we do? So before people switch off and think this is some guy going about how he returned his wallet, wow, how wonderful am I? It is not that story. This is this is completely different.
So you dined out on that wallet this afternoon. You went to a few nice restaurants.
Well,
it's not that story either.
No, perhaps some people would argue that some people have said to me subsequently I probably should have. But what happened is that, I mean, I know what it's like to lose a wallet, and those first hour or so after you've done it, some people don't even realise, and then they're panicking, ringing up all their banks and trying to cancel their cards. So obviously my wife and I opened the wallet and looked in. There was loads of cards. There was driving licence. You know, like anybody, it seems to have their life in there. Yeah. But it didn't have any contact details. So I thought, well, do you know what? We're going to get this wallet back to this guy. I don't know where he lives. He's sitting in the street near my house, but he could be live anywhere. And so I fortunately, I tried to ring up the bank cards, and to see if, like, look, I found the guy's wallet. Can you ring him and tell him I've got it and he can come and get it from me? They were no help. I tried to ring the gym that the person was a member of, and they refused to help me. So we're in a bizarre...
That's crazy. I can understand a bank because of the strict laws and data protection, but there's nothing really stopping a local gym, even if you're a bit of an idiot trying to chance it. There's nothing stopping them calling that individual and saying, look, it might be nothing, but can you at least check and see if you've got your wallet?
I could tell them everything about the guy because he had his driving licence in there. So I said, look, I know the guy's details. All I need to tell you is this is his name. Can you ring him and give him my name and number and say, I found his wallet. Don't worry. Come and get it from me. And I'll return it. Of course, they didn't. So in the end, I looked at the driving licence, obviously has an address on it. But the address was about 2 miles from where I live. And I'm thinking, well, that's a bit obscure because this person was probably walking around the streets near my house. And I don't understand why he would suddenly drop it if he lived in a very nice area of near where I live. So I said to my wife, we'd spent about 40 minutes trying to ring up these premium rate numbers to return this guy's wallet. So anyway, the story then takes a bizarre twist because I said, look, I'll jump in the car and I'm going to drive the couple of miles to that guy's house and give him his wallet back because he's probably now fretting about it. So I went to this house, and it's in this one of these really nice estates, and where everyone has a.
So it's a fair way away from where you live, then.
Exactly, yeah. and when it's one of those where it's got a name of a house, so you can't even go try and find number one or anything.
Oh, so you have to trawl up and down.
So in the end, I end up talking to loads of different neighbours. Do you know this house? Do you know this guy? I eventually found the house after about half an hour, and the person didn't live there anymore because I ended up speaking to some other neighbours. Said, "Oh, they've moved out." So I'm
Do you
like,
know what? That's illegal to have a driving license in your wallet with the wrong address on. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, well,
anyway,
bizarrely. So I thought, well, what do I do now? I'm not going to put it in his where he used to live because I don't even know if he goes back there. And the people said they didn't really know him and haven't seen him for a long time. So I went back to my house and said to my wife, well, I'm not really sure what to do now. And so I tell you what, I just suddenly decided that I'd use the powers of Twitter. And this is like one of these parts of these stories where you get the good and the bad of social media. So the guy's name was very, not that unusual. It was sort of, I don't know why I'm trying to protect it because it's now become quite well known. It's his name, I actually Googled it and I found his Twitter profile. He had one. I'm thinking, this looks like the guy. I clicked on the profile and I could see the face matched that on his driving licence. So I was like, brilliant. So I tweeted him and I said to him, I wrote to him, and I probably should read the tweet out because this is where the story then takes a rather bizarre twist. I said to him, "Hi," I'll ignore his name. "I found your wallet in the street. I've been trying to track you down. Can you message me?" And I thought, well, what more can I do? Maybe he'll write back or something like that.
And again, you said message me rather than do it via Twitter. By messaging, you could then sort of handle it via direct messaging, and it comes out of the sort of public domain as well.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and I can see it is this guy. I can see his picture, and I'm thinking, oh great, I might be able to reunite his wallet. Maybe he doesn't even realise. And of course, then what happened next?
Is he obviously tweeted you straight back and said, "You're an absolute legend, Damien Fay. I've heard you do good stuff for the masses, but now you're helping me out personally. Thank you very much." And that was the end of the story.
Well, this is where this is where it took a bizarre twist because he sent me back a message saying, "Even though it's in my pocket, you banal lowlife. Watch out, everyone. This one's a real chancer. What does he say? A real clever, sly operator. Mug a mug or something. Mug of a mug." And basically, so he just started abusing me on Twitter. And I was like, oh, right. And of course, I then suddenly panicked in a really bizarre way, thinking that, oh, maybe I've got the wrong guy. I've actually just worried somebody unnecessarily. And I'm thinking, oh, God, now people are going to think I'm trying to scam them.
And actually, with the work that you do for your day job, the last thing you want is someone to start retweeting that tweet to say that you're some sort of a scammer. It could damage your business.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's just that you're going through trying to. I thought, oh, do you know what? Then this is backfiring. I was just trying to do a good deed for somebody and get their wallet back.
So you lobbed it in the canal.
Well,
that was the end of it.
No, because what I did is I wrote back to him saying, "Oh well, sorry. Please do check because I have a wallet in his name. Basically, apologies if it's not you. I just don't think there'd be many people with your name on Twitter." And then suddenly, about 20 minutes later, I got a tweet that said, "Oh, actually, really should have checked."
Brilliant. So you come back and...
really should have checked first. Apologies. I thought this was some scam. I can't find my wallet with about 1 million... with about 1 million exclamation marks. And of course... I mean, I at this point, I mean, I'm not saying that...
The reason it took him 20 minutes to reply is he was tucking into that humble pie, wasn't he, just before he managed to press retweet
and of course,
reply.
It's one of these bizarre... The reason why, then, this story took a bizarre twist, because it obviously had played out on Twitter. And I don't know if people know that when I obviously have a Twitter following, and a lot of the people who follow me on Twitter are journalists, because a lot of journalists use Twitter. So a lot of the newspapers out there, the Times, Telegraph, you name it, they do follow me, and I sort of exchange tweets with them. Of course, they'd seen this ridiculous exchange, because then I sort of, at the point where I'd been abused, was saying, "Oh well, you find a guy's wallet, try and do a good deed, and this is what you get." Well, I don't know why I bothered. And of course, then that just went viral because they saw it, retweeted the whole stream thinking it was hilarious, and the thing just took a life of its own and just went completely viral because obviously, I mean, I was only trying to help him out, and then suddenly I get abused for no apparent reason, called a scammer, and he hadn't even checked to see if his wallet was there, and then had to apologise. So next thing happens is that it took a life of its own. And I mean, I say this a few hours ago, and I ended up turning my phone off because by the point that it got retweeted by 120 times by various people in the media and whatever, and sort of globally and favorited, it just got out of control. That everybody's now sort of thinking, because it's one of those hilarious streams of somebody having to eat humble pie. And I know what your next question is probably going to be: is did he get his wallet back?
Yeah.
And this is the even more bizarre twist of the story, which is funny, is that suddenly the guy appeared at my front door. And
he appeared at your front door?
He appeared at my front door and was obviously a few of the builders, and he was sort of calling down the corridor because the front door was open. Oh, that is Damien. And I saw this guy looking really sheepish. And he...
Hang on a minute. Oh, you're going to explain, I'm sure. But this guy has randomly somehow tracked you down.
Do you remember like Mr. Ben, the cartoon, when suddenly the shopkeeper appears? This guy who's been abusing me on Twitter suddenly appears. And it turns out that not only is he a financial advisor, which is a weird twist of fate, that he's actually operates in a kind of the same industry as me, of all the jobs he could do in the world. But it turns out he has just moved in 4 doors down the road from me.
Oh, no.
And he is, of course, he's come up. I don't know how he knew where I lived, if he'd seen me in the street. I've never seen him before. And he must have seen and found, I don't know how he found out where I lived, that I had had his wallet, because I'd mentioned it to the guys at the shop. So, but of course, what happened, I returned his wallet to him and he apologised. He seemed a decent enough bloke in the end, actually, and I sort of laughed with him about it and said that he apologised for abusing me, and I said, look, don't worry about it, I was just trying to get it back. And of course, then what happened is, in the background, I hadn't really been paying attention, but this has gone viral on Twitter, and more people are like retweeting what's going on. And of course, it got out. When you read the comments, if you're listening to this podcast, go on my feed, because they're on there, and obviously it's public, it's open, so whatever he'd written on there. And the next thing I know, the Daily Mail newspaper have tried to contact me, and I'm thinking, do you know what, because I've gone to all the journalists, I'm just ignoring them. I'm thinking, yeah, well, I don't really... Got the guy's wallet back, that's all I cared about. When I was sitting there later on this evening, just before I come on here to talk to you, Andy, the Daily Mail have only just gone and run an entire story on the whole saga, and people can Google it, and it says, it's got a ridiculous headline. It's something like, Good Samaritan tries to return wallet via Twitter and gets called a lowlife. And that's, I think, the headline if you Google it, which is... Well, I mean, I just laughed at it, and so it just shows you.
That's literally gone to press. I mean, it's Friday night we're recording. That's literally gone to press a couple of hours ago. So, I mean, who knows where that might lead? By the time this podcast goes out, this could be a front page news.
I'm just ignoring the playing it down, because all I was trying to do. But the thing was, he seemed a nice enough guy actually. But there's the lessons in there that I just laughed at. I mean, when my wife found out, I mean, she was actually furious because of that. Because when she came in, I said, oh, look, I just got really abused on Twitter. It is that guy, I'm sure. Of course, the next minute, he actually appeared. And, I mean, obviously, he had to eat a bit of humble pie and was apologised about it. But, of course, this is the lessons that from all this, is that when you do things on Twitter and you sort of be abusive, because he thought it was a scam, which I kind of get. If somebody thinks that somebody's maybe trying to scam them, but the best thing to do with a scam is to ignore it, not to reply to it. And he then, that was the thing that he did wrong, and he just then sort of started hurling abuse. And I mean, I don't mind. I mean, I'm fairly thick-skinned if someone wants to hurl abuse at me. But I mean, at one point, it's like you kind of think, oh, why do I bother even trying? But it just proves it's worth trying, because he got his wallet back and he was happy. I'm not quite sure now what he's going to think when he actually opens the newspaper and finds a story in the biggest newspaper in the UK based on the Twitter conversation of me saying, I found your wallet, him abusing me, and me saying, okay, you best just check anyway, sorry about that, and then him saying, oh, actually, that is my wallet. So it's a ridiculous story that you couldn't make up if you'd wanted to. And so we're at the point now where I don't know where this is quite going to end. I'm hoping it will end fairly soon, because the wallet was reunited. But the reason I was talking about it is because that's the behind the scenes of what actually occurred. Me driving around 2 miles there and back to try and reunite a wallet, not found the guy, the bank's not helping, the gym's not helping. So some of those simple things you work out that I realised that, do you know what? I get why banks can't, but if only he'd had a number in his wallet, do you know, like a card, a business card or anything saying he found, call me, I'd have rung him and he would have got his wallet back and it would have been happy days and he'd have been, oh, brilliant, thanks a lot. And of course, in a rather bizarre twist of fate, he now seems to be
the enemy.
He seems to be in the Daily Mail because of his aggressive streak when he thought he was being scammed. So also, if you think you're going to be scammed, do check, because the best thing to do is not reply, and certainly play everything on social media with a straight bat, because the good of social media is that I was able to return a wallet to him before he'd even realised he'd lost it, which is a great thing about social media. But of course, then if it goes the other way and you do something you probably don't want people to see, because the problem is clients and everything can see that stuff. So it's a very bizarre series of events that still return people's wallets, but even if you want to use your initiative and try and use Twitter, it can occasionally backfire. I mean, you wouldn't believe that, would you, if somebody told you that they found a wallet a couple of hours ago and the next minute they're on the front page basically of the Daily Mail trying to give a guy a wallet.
It was a bit longer, that clip, but it was definitely worth it. The whole thing, how it sort of transpired, and the fact that he ended up being basically a neighbour of yours is quite funny. And funnily enough, neighbours seems to be a running theme in your life and in our podcast as well. Because I tell you what, should we run the clip and we'll talk about it after?
Yeah.
Here's Damien's neighbours taking starring role in the podcast once again. I'm surprised you've got any neighbours talking to you. You've had Walletgate, you've got this extension going on at the moment with the loft, and obviously must be annoying every neighbour under the sun. Like that.
I have fallen out. I fell out with one neighbour, Andy. People listen to this podcast. I am a really decent bloke, and I went round to my neighbours and said, look, any problems, blah, blah, blah. And you always get one person who will still moan, even though it was not justified. And sometimes you just can't please all the people all of the time, can you, Andy?
You really can't. No, there's probably people that don't even like this podcast.
Right, let's move on.
And if there are any of those people out there, then please ignore what Damien said about leaving a review at the start of the podcast. Just ignore that. Moving on.
Having said that, quick one. On Neighbours, there are some really good people out there, because this evening it was raining and a chap knocked on my front door and said to me, I think your cat wants to come in because it's raining. And the cat came scurrying in the door. So my cat has somehow acquired the ability to convince random passers-by to knock on the front door to get her let in, which is an incredible talent for a cat. So yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, so there you go. There are some people out there. But talking about slightly shrewd people, there's one other money-related story I just sprung to mind. My daughter, you know her, Andy, but for people who don't, obviously, I have a 5-year-old daughter who actually inspired money to the masses, and she's obsessed with losing her teeth. We mentioned about the tooth fairy in a previous podcast. Well, the other night, I went into her bedroom and was putting her to bed, and as I was putting her to bed, suddenly a piece of paper fell on the floor from underneath her pillow, and I picked up the piece of paper and went, what's this? At which point she went, no, don't read that. And of course I read it, and it said, Dear Tooth Fairy, my tooth has fallen out, but I've lost it. And of course, she's got a full set of teeth, so I didn't know whether to admire the sort of cunning and ingenuity to try and money make, and as a money making scheme, or the fact she was trying to pull one over on a tooth fairy and lie. Of course, I just burst out laughing and said, you can't do that. And then I got into a ridiculous conversation about a fictional being and how they would check and stuff like that. So that just shows you how shrewd youngsters are. A 5-year-old was...
She really just went and did that off her own back.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
But what I wish I'd done at the time, rather than laugh and say, you can't do that, you can't she'll work it out. You can't just put a note.
Put a little bit letter back from the Tooth Fairy with a little moral on there saying why it was wrong.
Well, what I would have done is I would have put money under there and to see if she would have kept repeating the trick and for how long.
Oh, I see, right. Okay.
And to see if eventually she'd come in and go, Dad, and own up to this sort of pile of money that's accruing in her bedroom. But I admired her shrewdness. I reckon Alan Sugar would have definitely hired her.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Well done, her.
We veered off topic. It was good to see that clip finish on a story about my daughter, because she was one of the reasons we started Money to the Masses 6.5 years ago, I think it was now. So I should know because actually we started up on paternity leave, so it was 6.5 years ago. So it was good to have that in a nice cyclical way. We've had the first ever podcast in this highlights reel, and we've gone full circle on that and on the story of Money to the Masses. So we've got one more clip, I think, left, Andy. Is that right?
Yep, let's put the last clip in. It's it just focuses on me.
I just like this because for me it just made me personally laugh, because you just struggle to name a body part. You can just obviously pick that phone up and access all your emails. So if you lose your phone, then somebody, whoever finds it, has access to all of that, and you'll be surprised by the number of people who don't set up a PIN number or the fingerprint verification on their phone. Nearly every phone will now enable you to have PIN set up on it, so you have to put in a PIN number in order to access it. Do you have a PIN code on your phone, Andy?
I used to have a PIN code until I upgraded to the iPhone 6. Other phones are available, and yeah, I use a thumb lock, like a what's it called?
Your fingerprint, Andy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I use.
You should leave that in.
What's that called?
The funny thing is, for people who listen to this podcast, at that point, Andy was looking at me, waving his thumb at me, as if to say, "What is that?" I feel like I can't really help you in life, Andy, if you're struggling.
And that's coming from a guy who said, I worry for people who don't have the cognitive function to come up with their own password, and I can't even name a part of my body.
That's the end of the 100th episode, Andy. It's a hell of a milestone.
It's brilliant. Brilliant. That's a bit. We're brilliant, everyone.
Well, during that episode, I did call myself a money expert. I did various different things. I said I'm a really nice guy as well. So we might as well keep up the arrogance, because it makes me sound like an absolute wally. But there you go.
What I meant by brilliant was it was brilliant to do. It was good fun to listen back, and yeah, I mean, we should be proud. We really should be proud.
Yeah, one of the things that came out of it is, going back to the podcast, we always tried to make them evergreen so they didn't date. And we've done a brilliant job of doing that. So if you're listening to this podcast, do go back and listen to randomly, pick a number, pick any of the podcasts going back from the first all the way through to 99, because they don't date. And there's some bits in there that actually be mildly entertaining, because the key thing about our podcast, we try, as much as we teach you about money and try and educate you and everything like that, we also want to make it a little bit more light-hearted, because the problem with all money podcasts that I've come across, or any other type of medium, whether it's papers or the internet, is very dry, very serious, and puts people off. So I hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and if you have, then leave us a review.
Yeah, we always bang on about it, but hey, it's our 100th episode. We've hopefully given you something there that's enjoyable and shareable too. So do, if you can, share it with your friends, family, whoever. I think it's a good one for them to start with.
I think that's right, Andy. That's it. I think we're done.
We're done. If you need to get in contact or want to get in contact, it's podcast@moneytothemasses.com, or you can get hold of Damien on his Twitter handle, and I'm going to get Damien to do it because I always get it wrong and I don't want to muck it up on the 100th episode.
Money to the Masses with the number 2. I almost had some clips. I was trying to find them where you mess it up, but they're on the cutting room floor with a whole host of other top clips. Actually, some of our favourite clips that didn't actually make the final cut because they were lost to the cutting room floor was, I remember the time when the delivery man stopped interrupted the podcast mid-flow to
Yeah.
deliver something.
That was at your house, and I do remember. I do have a vivid memory of ordering a Chinese takeaway during a podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got to pick you up on that because I do the editing. Now, I don't actually. This is a good time to bring it up. Sorry, I know it's the 100th episode, but I'm going to take issue here, right? I think you forgot that the mics were still running because I do the editing on these podcasts, and as I was ordering the podcast, and as I was ordering the Chinese, I was 6 or 7 dishes in, and I overheard you say the words, "Jesus, how many is he ordering for?" It was just me and my wife.
Yeah, well, it was obviously you were obviously hungry that day, but the every now and then I will just, if Andy does lose concentration mid-flow, then I might carry on. That's where we're in different locations, so there's plenty of them. Some of them probably quite lucky that they're on the cutting room floor, so we won't get into too much trouble. But I've enjoyed it. Go back to some of my favourite podcasts actually on content. One of my favourite ones was the one where we did about your book, where you were on TV.
I think that was called Writing a Bestseller and the Magnificent Melons.
Yeah, where Andy topped the American and UK Amazon charts, which was quite amazing, and he told us how he did it, and we talked about that, and inspiring people to do their own thing. So go and have a listen to that one if you do pick any of the 100.
Damien, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think I should leave it to you to say the final words before the celebration music kicks in.
Well, thanks for all your support for the 100 episodes, and here's to the next 100. Teenager